Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Thank you so much for being with us again this week. In the Spotlight this week, a man who needs no introduction to people that make it in the Middle Georgia. You see him on TV promoting his day job. Virgil Adams, who is the senior partner of Adams, Jordan, and Harrington. Did I get it right?
You
Adams,
right.
Jordan, and Harrington. And he's been doing so much here in the community, but we appreciate him joining us here in the Spotlight. Welcome to our program.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to tell you people, I could get President Biden on the program before I could get this gentleman. It's taken me a long time, but I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
But we wanted to talk about the various things that you involve. Everyone knows your law firm. We don't want to talk too much about that. We want to talk about all the other things that you do in this community. And I want to start right with young people, because as the former president, or maybe still the president, as 100 black men, you are doing so much. Talk to me about your involvement with young people.
Yeah, that's one of the most rewarding things that I've been involved in the community. I am past president, the first founding president of the organization. And as you might recall, we started a chapter here in 1996. And we modeled it after the chapter in Atlanta. And the primary project of the chapter in Atlanta was what they call Project Success, whereby they adopted a school, inner city school, and they promised the kids there that if they graduated, stayed together, that they would pay for their college educations. So we adopted Ingram Pie, the 5th grade class. We intended to adopt a 5th grade class, but they had two, so there's no way we could adopt one without getting the other. So we adopted that class, and we provided mentoring for them. We provided access to certain activities and resources for them, such as some of them wanted to be in the band but didn't have instruments. So we bought the instruments. But we committed to them that if they wanted to go to college, any sort of post-secondary education, that to the extent that they could not get funding, that we would provide for their college educations. So basically what we did was put our own money, paired with whatever kind of grant they could get to provide their college educations. And we actually funded educations for about 20 students to get through post-secondary education.
That's commendable. But you have a feeling for this, not because you are outside looking in. You come from the community where a lot of these children come from. Tell us about your rise from the projects, I understand, a single mom, and to where after high school?
Exactly, Jack, and that's why I'm committed, because I remember people helping me and reaching out to me when I was a kid and shaping my future. But I was born initially, I guess I should start at Riverside Drive, right where the Waffle House is on Riverside Drive. That's where I was born.
You went downtown or went out on?
One downtown. I was
Okay.
born there and stayed there until I was going to the 5th grade, and we moved to Plant Street, which is right where Terminal Heights is.
Yes.
So most of my formative years were spent on Plant Street, playing there on the center field, on the basketball court, and growing up, there. I grew up with a mother, an aunt, and my father was really my grandmother.
Okay.
She was the leader of the house.
Grandmother.
Grandmother, that's the way it is. So what they always instilled in me was get a good education, study hard. One day you'd be able to get a decent job and then be able to live a decent life. So it was about that education, for me. And as you well know, back then, you were not only just raised by the parents in the house, you were raised by everyone in the neighborhood. And that served me well. And
well, how do we get away from that? Now we have children that if we try to correct it, because like you said, in those days, the person down the street could whoop your butt and say, I'm going to tell your daddy I'll whoop you or your mama or what have you. But now you talk to some of these kids, you might have to fight them. How do I'm not asking you to be a psychologist here, but where did this break down? So, because it's clear, we can't say just because it was a single family, a single parent. Right. You are a living example that a single mother and a grandmother and other can do wonders if a person paid attention to what they're doing.
And I think about that a lot, but I think your values have changed, and I think to a certain extent it's changed because of what kids became exposed to or have become exposed to that we didn't have. We had so much less, but we didn't know we had less. we appreciated what we had. Our values were different. But now with everything that these kids are exposed to through television, all sort of, the internet and everything, there's so much thrown at them. You combine that with the fact that poverty is significant in this community. So here are a bunch of kids that don't have a lot of means, but then they see other things, and then in the midst of all that, you've got gang activity. So you've got the perfect storm. You've got a recipe for kids not being so committed to working hard, getting that education, and then reaping the benefits, but wanting it all then because they see it right there. And I gotta, admit, I think it's tough being a kid growing up now. It's extremely tough because they have so much thrown.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure, everything that's out there in front of them.
Social media.
Everything, everything. I mean, it is totally different. But again, we can call it poverty. We can call it young mothers and grandmothers are young.
But whatever it is, we got to fix it.
We got to fix it. We got to fix it.
And marijuana, I think, is a big culprit here. Now, when I say I'm not a fuddy-duddy about marijuana, it's legal in D.C. They just voted yesterday in Virginia. It's legal in New York. So I don't want. But young people, what young people have to understand, and I think our health department has to do a better job of telling them that this stuff is bad for you while your brain is developing, that you need to wait till you're 21, just like alcohol. And I think that's one of the problems because. I think it's taken its toll on too many young people, causing them not to do what you were saying, focus, stay on task, get an education.
Sure.
So you would think, we hear about sports figures and entertainers being role models. You would think that a young man or a young woman would look at a Virgil Adams or so many other people, especially a Virgil Adams, and say, if this guy can come from the projects, if you will, from very little, and he didn't rob anyone. He worked for what he has, and now he's the chairman or the senior partner of a major law firm. You would think they would want to say, that's who I want to be like.
Yeah, well, I would hope that there are some kids, or at least one, who've done that. And not to say that I'm all that or anything like that, but I would hope that there have been some kids out there that have that same mindset. But I kind of go back to the earlier point. When they look at me or look at a Jack Ellis or whatever in the community, but then you turn the TV on and you see the instant cash, kids coming out of high school, 17, 18 years old, they go to NBA, they're instant millionaires. And they look at how quickly that happens, and then all of a sudden the vision turns from looking at the person in the community that has worked hard and paid the dues to, again, instant gratification. And I think therein lies some of the problem. And again, we go back to the parenting as well. When you don't have that structure in the family, when you don't have that in place to help mold and shape these kids, then they tend to stray and they look at other things that may get their attention. And as I said, I think it's tough being a kid these days.
When did you decide that I wanted to be a lawyer? Did you decide as a young person, when you're in college, at Albany State, or after? When did you decide I want to be a lawyer?
Funny story on that. When I was a senior in high school at Central, one of my instructors was Betty Phillips. She was a former member of the school board. I think she passed several years ago. And she taught a government course, and part of that course had some basic law principles in it. And she would invite speakers to come to the class. And one speaker she invited was Fred Hasty, who was the district attorney back then. So he came in, and I was kind of fascinated about what he said about his job. But then she took us on a field trip down to the courthouse, and we sat in on a trial. And I'll never forget this because it was a criminal trial, and they were trying a guy that they had termed the barefoot rapist because he was committing a bunch of rapes in South Bibb and South Macon. And what he would do would take his shoes off and leave them outside the window, before he would break in and terrorize these ladies. And I was just absolutely, just totally blown away and mesmerized about what was going on in that courtroom. And that's the point that I decided that, well, maybe I can't be the next Willie Mays, you know, because I was a big baseball fan and player, but this is what I want to do. So it was really when I was a senior in high school.
And then from there to Albany State, you could have gone probably to many universities and colleges, even though it was a few years back, but you chose an HBCU.
I sure did, and had some other opportunities to go to other schools, as you say, in the area. And then I think back on one, my wife and I were talking about this not long ago. One Saturday night, a military Army vehicle pulled up in front of the house on Plant Street, and you know, we didn't know what was going on. We were sitting there with the doors open. It was 9 or 10 o'clock, because back then there was no issue with that. And a guy came out in uniform, and he had an envelope, brown envelope. And what it was, I don't know how this happened, but it was an appointment to West Point. And I said, no way I'm gonna deal. I know you're a vet, but I said, that's not gonna be for me.
You would have been in class with General Austin, the Secretary of Defense. I think you're all about the same age.
Yeah, not gonna happen. Yeah. But I had friends, you know, in school, and all of us had talked about going to school together, and people that I knew and looked up to, teachers, they were all graduates of HBCUs. And that's what helped shape me. You know, I remember Jerome Guy was a counselor, assistant principal at Central.
I know him.
And he was a graduate of Albany State. And after we graduated from high school, a couple of my friends, they were going over to talk to him so he could help them get some financial aid at Albany State. And I tagged along too and went over. And he said, you know, boy, by the way, where are you going? I said, well, I haven't really decided. I'm looking at going down to Eckerd College in St. Pete. I said, but I'm not real sure yet. He said, well, you checked my grades, and he said, well, let me call Albany State. And he called down there, and they offered me a full ride right then.
My.
And that's how I made that decision. Yeah.
But so then from Albany State, what did you major in Albany State?
I majored in English.
In English, okay.
Yeah.
Serve you well as a lawyer. That's your right?
Yeah.
Speak. So then from Albany State, you'd already decided you were going to be a lawyer, so then it was just a matter of choosing a law school, I guess.
Yeah, and then I actually majored in English, and I changed toward the end to psychology. But those two combinations I thought served me well
as a lawyer.
But yeah, so then I decided to go to law school, and I only applied to Mercer, and I knew Charles Mathis. Charles and I had grown up. His younger brother Milton and I were in the same classes in elementary school. Charles was a couple of years ahead. So I applied to Mercer, came home, met him, and he actually took me to meet a couple of the deans at the law school in Mercer. It was, you know, I did not expect to have that interview because I played baseball in college but broke my leg the last year, so I was on crutches and had my hair all braided. So I wasn't expecting anything. So he just said, okay, come on, let's just go meet him. So we went over and met, and they gave me, you know, some money, not a full scholarship, but enough money that I could get by in law school, and got accepted, worked that summer at Sears and Roebuck to buy my books. And
Sears and Roebuck,
yeah,
that's a name for you.
Yeah, man, I learned how to wrap gifts in customer service, and I was the best gift wrapper you could find back
because
then.
you had a goal in mind. You knew you weren't going to be wrapping those gifts always.
That's exactly right.
But you knew you had to. But now, so you finished law school, but you didn't go straight to the Atlanta. You didn't go run off to New York and try to get in a big law firm. You went to work as a public servant, in the DA.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah, and I guess in some respects I was in the minority again because I never wanted to leave Macon. I never did. I never wanted to go to college far away from Macon. So that's why, again, Albany State was great for me. But I didn't want to leave Macon. And when I was in law school, I met Louis Sands, and he was sort of a mentor for
judge now, a federal judge. Is he still a federal judge? Has he retired?
No, he's a senior judge. He's still a federal, yeah. But I met him, and he was a mentor for me and the other 4 black members of my law school class.
4?
It was 5 of us, which was the largest class in the history of Mercer Law School. And he mentored us. So he was at the DA's office at that time. And I asked him if I could come down and just volunteer because I was working summers with Sam Hart's Upward Bound program at Mercer. But I had a lot of free time, you know, during the day. So I would go down there and volunteer, and I would sit in on trials. And a couple of times, you know, I would be sitting in on meetings with them, and one day one of the senior attorneys asked me, he said, well, Virgil, what do you think? And I told him what I thought about what they were doing. So then next time they were trying a case, well, what do you think? And I would tell them what I thought. So then the next year, they actually hired me as a law student, a summer law clerk. And I actually got to try a case as a law student, as a third-year law student, with the assistance of one of the assistant prosecutors, because Georgia has what's called the Third Year Practice Act. And if you are a third-year law student and you work in a DA's office or a public defender's office, you can actually try a case with one of the attorneys sitting there with you. So I actually got to try a case, and really it was what I wanted to do. It took me back to when I sat in on that trial of the barefoot rapist, because in my mind, being an attorney meant being in the courtroom. So going down to the DA's office gave me the opportunity to be in the courtroom, to learn how to be an attorney, to learn how to try a case. And I tell students now all the time, if you want to be a trial attorney, go where people try cases. And they try cases in the DA's office and the public defender's office. So that's where I learned how to hone my craft, if you will.
Yeah. So you didn't go to a silk stocking law firm, if you will, but now you're the head of a silk stocking law firm.
I wouldn't call us a
well,
silk stocking.
I think most people would say you're one of the premier law firms in this.
Well, I appreciate that.
In this town.
Appreciate that.
I know and I say this without any hesitation, I haven't needed a lawyer lately, but if I needed one, I would call you.
Appreciate that.
But get him. So we know you've been a very successful lawyer, but you still give back to this community. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, when we had all these killings. I was out of the country 8 months. I'm getting kind of confused here. But you started a new initiative that you had a press conference I attended. It wasn't necessarily 100 black men. It was just black men you wanted to pull together and say, we got to stop this foolishness, this killing. What drove that?
Yeah, that was something that we came up with. Myself, Reverend James Baker was really instrumental in putting that together. So we partnered with my law firm, 100 Black Men, and again, James Baker and some other pastors, to try to get a message out to stop the killing and put these guns down. So we came up with the idea of getting some billboards with a slogan put on the billboards. And what we came up with is think before you shoot. Think before you shoot. Lives matter. Think before you shoot. So we put these up all over town, and for a while there, for a couple of months, we actually saw a decrease in shooting. Can't say that was directly attributable to the billboards, but it was about trying to reach out to these young people and get them to think before you shoot. Let's stop killing each other. Yeah, because that's what we were doing.
That's what we're doing. And where did they get all these guns from? President Biden, we're taping here on the 8th of April. He made a big statement today, press conference about getting rid of these guns. And we have more guns probably in Macon, Georgia than we need. But how do we get rid of these guns, man?
I don't know that. There's got to be some. Well, it has to come from the federal government. We have to have some
gun control,
some type control, some type there.
Not getting rid of the Second Amendment. You're not talking about.
No, not trying to do that at all. But there has to be some type of control. I mean, some of the guns that we see that are used in these mass killings. Why do you need those? And when you look at the number of young people that are using these guns, that are killing each other, something has to stop. Now, I think we got to balance the constitutional right against lives. And we got to balance that because a lot of lives are being lost unnecessarily and needlessly because, again, they're not thinking before they shoot. The first option is a gun.
Yeah.
And we got to get away from that.
You mentioned it matters. It's a lot of black on black crime, but life is a life, whether it's black or white, but life is life. But so you're saying we can't just have a slogan, Black Lives Matter over here, if Black Lives doesn't matter over here.
That's the other side of that coin. And I get Black Lives Matter. I understand what that's all about.
Yeah, so do I.
But we got to look in the mirror as well. And if we're killing each other, I mean, you know, come on, we gotta face that music too.
Just like last week, I had Dr. Scott on, and before that, I had Dr. Frederick Burton on, and we were talking about this COVID and how it has taken hold in the black community. But we have to accept the fact that we have a lot of pre-existing conditions.
That's right.
In our community. Some of it, we have to do something about it ourselves.
That's
like
right.
Get up and walk and not putting everything in our mouths that we see. And
sure.
So I think we do have some responsibility both in all aspects. But in addition to being a lawyer, a civic leader, if you will, an advocate for good, you're also an economic developer. I understand, I talked to Josh Rogers last week about Newtown Macon, and that you were doing some things downtown Macon. Is this new for you, development?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, as you know, one of my mentors who was truly like a father to me was Albert Billingsley.
Good man.
And the property that
a great man.
No, absolutely. And I tell people now, he's one of the smartest people that I've ever met, especially not having a long formal education. I mean, absolutely brilliant. But he owned the property that's in the block where H&H Restaurant.
The old historic Cotton Avenue.
Whole historic Cotton Avenue that used to be a mecca of black-owned businesses.
Yes,
anyway.
I remember it.
And
I'm 75, so I'm older than you. I remember that.
So when he passed, in 2011, he wanted me to sort of be in charge of handling his affairs and that sort of thing. But my vision was Albert always would have wanted that property developed and really developed in a way that really symbolized what he stood for as a public servant, as a businessman, and as a successful contractor. So myself, along with another colleague of mine, Brian Adams, who we work together a lot on cases, no relation though. We purchased that property, and we are in the middle of developing it right now, and it is going to be loft apartments, and it will also be office and retail on the first level, the street level. It'll have gated parking, and it's going to be really, really nice. And the name of that development will be Billingsley Commons.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. I might have to, I'm getting ready to move I'm an empty nester, I'm getting ready to move to a 2-bedroom apartment. Maybe I can get one. But what I would like to, another thing I would like to ask you about. You have been on the fringes of politics. You've never been in, a lot of people have been encouraging you over the years. I know that for a fact. But you've kind of stayed clear of politics, but you yet support politicians. And I know this last time around, not your organization, but the people in your organization were very instrumental in Warnock's campaign and the turnout and so forth.
Right.
How does politics play into the overall development? How must we as a people be engaged in politics in order to make politics work better, to alleviate poverty, to get rid of guns, all the other things that we talked about?
Well, that's how you change. That's how you affect change at the ballot box. And I think if we did not get that message before, we got it this past election, because if you look at the turnout and the difference it made with Reverend Warnock winning and John Ossoff winning as well, it was because that's right. It was because and Biden for sure, it was because we committed to coming out and voting, and we understood the importance of that election. And Ossoff and Warnock, we understood that the balance of power would be shaped by those two elections, and we came out like we should have. So I think I was really, really encouraged, because, we've heard for so long, some of our people would say, well, my vote doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want to anyway. Well, that was proof that that's not the case.
Yeah.
That's not the case. So I think that's the way we affect change at the ballot box, and I think we have gotten that message, and I still think, too, that even though we've gotten some new roadblocks thrown in front
Yeah,
of us,
we'll talk about that.
I think we're going to overcome that.
Yeah, because as a result of that, as a direct result of your work and so many other people's work to make sure to have this gigantic turnout, now the powers that be that control the legislature, the Republicans say, oh, something had to be wrong, even though nothing was wrong, proven 10 times nothing was wrong. So how do you, as a lawyer, how do you reconcile this?
Yeah, the way I look at it, Jack, it's a solution looking for a problem. Because there was no problem. And you know, with the past election, all of the changes in absentee voting, Republicans put that in place in 2016 to make it easier for Republicans to vote. Well, Democrats just took their same game, their playbook, and beat them at the same thing. So I think we have to stay steadfast and just say, okay, we're gonna go old school, just like our forefathers did when they had the questions thrown at them, and you know, how many marbles in the barrel and that sort of thing.
Bubbles in a bar of soap.
They overcame that, and they still wouldn't let it deter them. And I think we have to do the same thing. And I think we will.
And I think it's going to be fought in the courts too. So we
Yeah,
have to fight
sure.
on two fronts. Even if
I
the
think
courts
so.
doesn't prevail, we still have to.
I would not be surprised if some of those provisions at least don't get struck down.
We have about a minute left, and I didn't know that you played baseball. So what else we don't know about Virgil Adams that people wouldn't know?
I don't know.
Are you a good golfer? I understand you're a good golfer.
It depends. Some days I'm pretty good, but
Okay.
that's the hardest thing I've ever done. That's a tough sport, but I love it. It's a high risk reward sort of thing. But I like playing golf. I grew up fishing. Love to fish.
Okay.
And you know, spend time with my wife and just sort of enjoy
and
life.
give back.
And
Always
give back.
think about giving back.
Gotta
you know
do
what? Someone asked me. A lot of people don't know. I love country and western music. A lot of people don't know. Come to my house. Say, I didn't know you like country. You know what? I grew up listening to it. That was the only thing we had on WBML. WBIBB went off at sundown. So if you want to listen to radio,
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. And I like to cook.
Do you?
Yep.
Okay, I remember you had over at the old Progressive Academy, you had some food, tasted something, and
Yeah.
you had a dish there. Well, look, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and thanks so much, and our guests, and thanks our audience, and thanks for being our guest this week here. We've been speaking with Virgil Adams, who is the senior partner of Adams, Herndon, and
Adams, Jordan, and Harrington.
Adams, Jordan, and Harrington, and but he has shared just some things that I didn't know. I didn't know he was a baseball player. I didn't know he loved basketball. Did you have Gonzaga? Tell the truth.
No, tell the absolute truth. I was telling people 2 weeks ago they would not run the table. That is hard to do. I didn't see it. I think what we saw was a great system team lose to great athletes.
Great. That's what it takes. That's what it takes. We want to thank you all so much for joining us. For Virgil Adams. And we want to thank all of you. I'm Jack Ellis. We want to thank all of you for joining us this week here on the North Georgia Spotlight. Until next week, goodbye.